manyoko so wire ya son anamu Nya kpane bato we otomo ni o ya do mo si akwie ya o Amo manyoko so wire ya son denbe mu o ya Nya kpane bato we otomo ni o ya do mo si akwie ya o Nya se pa yanju o se pa yanju o kiyan sa pa yanju ka o kiyan ma si pa yanju o so si olele ya si olele o ya si olele lele o ya si olele yo si olele amo manyo ko so wi ya son den be mu Tia kpani bato we atomo ni o abiyan mi do mo si awie ya o Kiyan se payan jijo mama Kiyan se payan jijo re son ke wo kiyan ya kiyan se payan ju o Kiyan ya uri money mo re tole se ma bembe son bi Kiyan ya uri manjo e abato ni Passion même oh Qui a eu money More tole se ma même pio abinyo be
Hello ladies and gentlemen and welcome to yet another edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In the wake of what has been happening in our Liberian community and politics back home, we want to look at certain issues as I get a sip. Some things have been happening that make you wonder, and those things have been happening in the name of politics. So we've been wondering what really is politics? What constitutes politics? What isn't politics? That's our topic tonight. But before we delve into that topic, we have some trending issues that we want to take a look at. The arrest of former Chief Justice Councilor Gloria Musu-Scott and 3 other family members has been trending on Facebook. So we want to talk about that a little bit before we get into our topic tonight. So tonight I've invited again the best panel in all of Liberian diaspora television to discuss what is politics, what isn't politics, but we're going to talk about a trending issue before we start. Let me welcome our governance consultant, Mr. Ahmed Salif. Welcome, Mr. Salif, to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis. Let's do it.
Thank you. Let me also welcome Dr. Abdoulaye Dukle, a panelist here. Dr. Duke, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. Pleased to be here.
Thank you. Let me also welcome FWell legal analyst, Councillor Frederick A.B. Jewe. Councillor Jewe, welcome to Tough Talking Thursday.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm happy to always be here.
We want to welcome all our viewers across the globe. Here at Tough Talking Thursday, we talk tough. And let me also welcome our statistician, the man who eat, drink, and sleep mathematics. He loves to deal with numbers because even God loved numbers that he devoted one book in the Bible for numbers. That's Kalebo Gonglo. Mr. Gonglo, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm happy to share the panel again with my usual colleagues. And welcome, Councillor Jewe. Mr. Gonglo, how are you? Good.
All right. So we will start the discussion tonight on the trending issue. That is, some time ago, a life was lost. Shalom Musu died. Some say she was murdered. And the police have charged her mother and 3 other family members with murder. It reads that Councilor Gloria Musu-Scott and 3 members of her family have been charged with murder, criminal conspiracy, and making false statements to law enforcement officers. Before we bring in the counselor to ask some questions. I want to go around the room. This is something that rock our community, that everybody is talking about. Let me start with Dr. Duke. Dr. Duke, what's your reaction? I mean, if I were in Maryland and I heard this, I would just shout "Popoli." Dr. Duke.
Yes. What's my reaction? I don't. It's hard to dwell into something like this from far, from a distance, and I don't want to fall into the conspiracy theories on one hand, and I don't want to be speculating on things that I don't know. Something happened in that house that night. We don't know the facts. We have never had any clear explanation from either the family or the police. All we know, one young lady died in that house. So something horrible happened. That I know. So how it happened, who did it? I don't want to get into all the political issues around it. That's different. But if you want me to talk about the politics of it, I can go back to 1999.
What happened in 1999?
In 1999, the whole opposition in Liberia. In 1999, the whole opposition was united to condemn the arrests of, some Crown people, Baibala, 12 of them, 32 of them were arrested. And then I think 20 were let go and became government witnesses. Baibala was arrested because of the Roosevelt Johnson case. And Baibala was sentenced. He said he had nothing to do with it. In fact, he and Roosevelt Johnson never agreed on anything. So, but he was arrested. They tried him, 10 years in jail. And the Ivorian government came in and tried to talk to them. Sheikh Kafuma and Michael Francis went to see the president. It was Taylor. Taylor said, yes, let the court system goes through, and then we'll find a solution to it. They appealed to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court looked at the case and doubled the sentence. Everybody was up in arms. We went to the embassy, the Carter Center, everywhere. You know what the case, who was handling that case?
No.
Gloria Mususka was Chief Justice.
And there you stop. Mr. Salif, what do you make of this? What do you make of what's going
on? Dr. Duke has dug a big hole. Well, like Dr. Duke, I mean, of course, those of us who are far away, we lack contextual information. Even if you are on the ground, you can only hope that law enforcement has some very strong evidence, right? So you get to this point where you've charged somebody that senior now, a criminal suspect, and has appeared before court. The counselor will help us understand all the legal intricacies here. But to me, it's either one of two things. It has to be they really have some very strong evidence to be able to get to this point, to escalate the case to this point, by charging the former Chief Justice and others, or that, speculations that we've been hearing in her son interviewed, he tried to suggest that this is political, it has to do with politics. I'm still trying to understand the politics of it. So it's really, to me, it's we still have a lot to learn to be able to understand. So hopefully our court system is just and fair in this case, and they will demonstrate fairness, that is strictly following the law and the evidence in this case, so that we can understand. If that is the case, then regardless status, anyone who is accused of a capital offense offense of any kind, any crime in the country under the law. No one is above the law in a rule of law context, right? At the same time, there's a presumption of innocence until someone has been found guilty, proven guilty before a competent court in our jurisdiction. So there's a lot to learn. I'll wait to hear more and learn more, and let me learn some from Councillor Jarrett tonight. Hopefully that will give us some insights.
Let me go to Mr. Gonglo. Unmute, please.
All right, so Dennis, let me say this. I would like to follow the same with the two previous speakers. Here's what I would say. You know, we are a constitutional democracy. We believe that everybody is equal before the law, regardless of who you are. Like Aristotle believed, you know, we are all equal citizens. So I think the obligation is on the government to bring forth the evidence and convict those who are alleged. You know, I mean, that's the only thing we can say. And maybe we can go one step further to say, hey, it's difficult in election time not to politicize, not to read this kind of case through political lens, but it may help the country if we are interested in saving the future of the country. It may be helpful for political leaders and political actors and activists and agents, cadres, militants, to maybe depoliticize the issue of law. Let's push the government to prove the case, as opposed to maybe reading, oh, because the person is a lawyer for Ahmed Salih, and they don't want the person to defend Ahmed Salih, so this is what is happening. You know, let's stick to the merits and demerits of the case, and let's pressure the government to bring forth the case against the former Chief Justice and the family. You know, I mean, because at the end of the day, what matters is what the jury will say, because this is going to be definitely a case that will go through jury trial. If the jury find the government evidence, you know, strong, they may move to convict beyond all reasonable doubt. If they don't find the government evidence, if there is even one doubt, the trial might just fail. So I will just say, let's push for the good of the nation.
And you trust the system to come up with the right.
Well, listen, look, Dennis, it's a different argument, because if you ask me, how would say, the state Liberia, actually the state needs to be deconstructed in its current form. If we have to make progress,
okay,
you know, we need to deconstruct the state and, you know, deconstruct our governance process. If we don't do that, even if you put Ahmed Salih, as bright as he is, he's going to fail as the president of Liberia, unless Ahmed has an agenda to deconstruct the state.
Which I do.
Before I bring on Councillor, yesterday the police had a presentation at the Ministry of Information showing showing why they are making the charge. Let's take a listen.
A 3D dimension of Councillor Scarf resident. This is a 3D dimension of Councillor Scarf resident, as will be developed by our engineers. This is the kitchen of Councillor Scarf. This is the garage, this is the pantry. This is the living room quarter. The side of the building is the sleeping quarter. As you can see, this house is being protected by iron door here, iron door, iron door, iron door, and another iron door. This house is heavily protected. And as you can see, this is a one-story building. This place is cast. This is a pictorial view of the house. It's a hostel building. So this entire place is cast. So, as you can see, in this room is a children's room. This is where we have 2 of the suspects along with the victim, which is the deceased. In this other room, we have one of our suspects, Rebecca Whistler. In this room, this room has been occupied by suspect Councilor Scott. This is Councilor Scott's lab room, and this is another empty room, and this is the empty room lab room. So, this house, like I said, is heavily guarded by virtue by the fact of these doors, these iron doors. And the window bar is being installed in a way, manner and form that no intruder can make a way in, neither can any intruder make a way out, except by way of another intervention. So our investigators, our crime scene investigator, visited the crime scene. We did a walk around of the entire building. From our analysis, it was proven that indeed it was not possible at any point in time for an intruder to have made their way into this house.
From our investigation, it was not possible for any intruder to enter the house. Therefore, any murder, and I'm assuming, will be those inside. Councilor Joel, just walk us through what has happened. And I know yesterday she was arrested. We heard something about habeas corpus released. Today again, they were re-arrested and now imprisoned at the Monrovia Central Prison. What's going on?
Dennis, before Joel come in, there was a critical part I wanted you to actually reach, and I believe you left that out. There was something the guy mentioned yesterday about a private security guy being in the yard, and they were positioned somewhere, and when they heard noise and how they made their way into the house, I thought it was important to listen to that part also.
Okay. We'll revisit that. Councilor Joey.
So this is a case where the government alleges murder was committed. In fact, this matter started sometime in February, around February 22nd, or prior to that, February 7th, and I think February 9th, Her Honor Gloria Musu-Scott had gone to complain to the Justice Ministry and the police people that on 2 occasions, armed robbers, or presumed armed robbers, attacked her home. The third attack led to Charlo's death. The complaint of Councilor Scott is that armed robbers attacked her house, and in the process, starve and murder Charlo. From then on, the government decided to investigate. And I think they invited Councilor Scott for more than 2 times, I think 3 times, along with the family, the household, to or at the police station. It continued until I think it was Tuesday this week, when the police finally invited her and ordered her and 3 other family members arrested, placed into the police cells, and kept there until Wednesday morning, I assume, or in that same process, when they were arrested and kept there, her lawyers decided to prepare a petition for a writ of habeas corpus, which writ demands that the living bodies of Councilor Scott and her relatives be produced at Criminal Court C. The petition filed before His Honor Blamo A. Dixon, judge, assigned circuit judge, Criminal Court C. The Councilor Scott stayed in jail until the police cell, along with her family members, until Wednesday, when the petition was immediately heard by Judge Blamo Dixon. And she was ordered release, sustained the habeas corpus proceedings, and ordered Councilor Scott and her relatives release on ground that even if the within 48 hours requirement for the detention of Councillor Scott and her family members has not expired. The judge concluded that Councillor Scott and her family members since February to this point were detained constructively by the police. Therefore, habeas corpus will lie. And they were released, placed back into, I think, a jeep, into the vehicle that went to pick them up, and she was taken at home. And I understand today she and the other 3 family members were arrested, I think by the Monrovia City Court, because during the argument before Judge Blamo Dixon, the government could not show prima facie evidence to continue to hold Councillor Scott and her relatives beyond bringing her to court. And so the raid was sustained and Councillor Scott was released. And I saw today that she has been arrested. She and the other 3 family members. And they are now at the Monrovia Central Prison. That's the facts of the case. You are muted.
And why? What would be the circumstances in which someone released yesterday will be arrested today?
Well, I need to go back and maybe allow the public to understand that arrest can be done by the court under 3 or 2 circumstances. One, the magistrate, all magistrates, in fact, in Liberia, have the authority to arrest anyone for any crime that is reported to the magistrate by the Ministry of Justice, any of the attorneys working for the Ministry of Justice. Or that's the first instance. The second phase of that could be if an indictment is found and a writ of arrest is issued by either of the Liberian criminal courts, then the defendants presumed to have committed a crime will be arrested based upon an indictment and a writ of arrest. I know that as of today's day, the grand jury is not sitting. And so the government chose to go to the magistrate court and issue a writ of arrest. Now, why did I mention that? Once the grand jury is sitting, the government will not be wasting its time to go to the magistrate court to have a writ of arrest issued. They will be proceeding before a grand jury, presenting evidence that leading up to the crime of murder as it claimed. And then the grand jury will vote to determine whether or not the crime as alleged were committed. And then a writ of arrest will be issued by the clerk of the criminal court. In this case, since the grand jury is not sitting, the government chose to go to the Monrovia City Court, which is the magistrate court, and had a writ of arrest issued. Mind you, Justice Scott and her family members were before criminal court C, not for the merit of the case. They were before criminal court C, contending that they were arrested and have been detained beyond statutory and constitutional period. Therefore, their living body should be produced and they should be set free. The judge agreed with the argument of our lawyers and sustained the rate and ordered her release. The judge lost jurisdiction at that time. He no longer could stop the issue of a writ of arrest because it was not the merit of the case. So the government just turned around and went back to the Monrovia City Court and issued a writ of arrest charging murder, criminal conspiracy, and reporting false stories or reporting falsely to the police. Yeah. And that's why they are currently in jail.
Can they be bailed out?
Yeah, that's I saw, let me go back. I think when they were arrested, when Councillor Scott and her family members were taken to the police station, I was there pretty close to 10 on her legal team and they were up and down the police station. Until today, when she was released, all of them were happy and went home. Today, when they were arrested, when Councillor Scott and her family member were arrested, yes, to answer a question, a bill can be prayed for and obtained. Now, the process is, it's a common knowledge and it's a misconception by many non-lawyers, including the police, to believe that when someone is accused of committing capital offense like murder, there can be no bail. That is not true. The Criminal Procedure Law section 13.1 is very clear. It states that a defendant charged for capital offense as a right is entitled to bail, to bond, unless proof is evident and the presumption is great that the defendant or defendants committed a crime. What is that? What is it that law saying? The law is saying, look, even though the government charges or has charged Gloria Scott, Councillor Gloria Scott, and her family members for the crime of murder and so on, they as defendants are entitled to bail unless the government can prove that it has sufficient evidence to believe that Councillor Gloria Musu Scott and her family members committed the crime of murder. The burden to prove that is on the state when a writ of arrest is issued. What I don't understand.
My last question. Yeah. Okay, let's look at this scenario. They get bailed out, and then the lawyer get to say, okay, can we do the trial next year, February 2024? Is that possible?
When I hear you, you're breaking up.
No, he said they are built out.
Huh?
Yeah, you are bailed out. Can you work with your lawyer, for example, to say, okay, we're now ready for trial till, let's say, February 2024?
Well, the issue there is that because this murder is a capital offense, the magistrate has only examining jurisdiction, meaning the magistrate can take facts considering whether proof is evident, and the presumption is great that Councillor Scott and her family people committed a crime. It can conduct a preliminary hearing. But because this is a murder trial, the matter will have to travel to the circuit court within 2 weeks' time. The magistrate, because he has no trial jurisdiction, will have to refuse to continue further and have the matter forwarded to Criminal Code A, which has jurisdiction over murder cases. At that level, Criminal Code A will have to issue cause, go before the Minister of Justice and the prosecuting attorneys will have to go before a grand jury to be able to have the grand jury find an indictment, have them indicted, arrested, and brought to court. No, the defendant cannot be admitted to bail and her lawyer go by and say, well, we cannot come to court until February 2024. You don't have that luxury. The law provides that, and the process is not started by you. The process was started by the state. So the state should proceed to obtain an indictment. Now, if the state fails to obtain an indictment and prosecute the defendant after 2 successive sittings of Criminal Code A, a motion to dismiss for failure to prosecute can be instituted by the defendant. And the court would determine whether the facts as stated will be true that the state has not made any effort to prosecute the defendants. Then the defendant may be released. But until then, the defendant on a bail will have to add a report consistent with the court assignments, the hearing days, the dates the judge wants them to appear, and so forth. I would have thought today, let me go back, I would have just thought today that the lawyer representing Councillor Scott would have divided and sent into 2 parts. One group responsible to be ready to carry the complaint of the magistrate to a circuit court because considering the magistrate, he will have ruled to send Councillor Scott and her family members to jail. The other group of lawyers will have filed a motion and also express on the record of the court that because Councillor Gloria Musu Scott has been Chief Justice of the Republic of Liberia and has many property or have homes and whatsoever, and is noted to not be someone who has scorned the bailiwick of the country, the judge should grant Gloria Scott and her family member release to either a bishop or a church, a trusted family member, and write out the schedule when they should report. So that's what 13.5 requires of the Civil Criminal Procedure Law.
Thank you. I know Mr. Salih has something to say, but let me come in with one question before. In that case, I watched and thank you, Mr. Gonglo, for pointing that out. In what they show, what I saw, I did not see, I don't know, it is not time yet to say that, but the police did not say anything that linked the suspect to the crime. All I saw was it is not possible for someone to come from outside and do this. So is it because it is not in trial yet, or they really should say it? Because looking at it from my or non-lawyer point of view, is like, okay, even if there's no entry, how do you establish that they actually kill her? Because this is murder.
Well, I think our police, and this is not just the weird government, government in the past have needed to ensure that the police really get to be trained when it comes to the criminal procedure law. And it seems to me in this particular case, the police is relying upon the fact that no one could enter from outside, because they pointed out the many gates, how secure the place had been. Therefore, the assumption is, that's what they're presenting. They're presenting an assumption that Gloria Scott and the other 3 family members were the ones who murdered Charlo Musu. And unless they have anything more than that, they have a real problem in the courtroom. Because this is murder. Such circumstantial piece of evidence that to any elementary student mind would not hold water, will have real difficulty in the courtroom. My problem and my fear is I do not think that Councillor Scott has a very good legal team. And I am afraid that people who representing her may not be current with the criminal procedure law sufficiently. One example would be, why would Councillor Scott go to jail today? And her family member, why would they go to jail? I would have thought a petition or a motion to admit them to bail would have been filed, anticipating that the magistrate would not agree with you, we will summarize into a circuit court to stop the entire process. I did not see that. I saw everybody putting out their hand perhaps and saying, oh my Lord, Justice Scott and others are taken to jail. So what are the lawyers doing? Are they following one step behind to the prosecution when they move forward? That's my problem. And I think people may be sympathizing with Councillor Scott, but sympathy is not the law. You must be able to represent her ably. You must be able to see, even if that is happening now, I'm wondering, when the trial goes on, would the prosecution, would the defense be able to question the police sufficiently as to nobody entering the house, but then also admitting that people broke through the window to be able to get into the house, and then ask Gloria Scott for the key to open the door for people to come. 2 women were taken through the window. Why would people who live in the house where they all lock up in the other section of the house, they have the key, why will you bring them through a window? But that is part of the trial proceeding. I'm just afraid that the lawyers that I saw, I do not believe that they have sufficient capabilities. I do not believe that they will be able to represent her fairly and clearly. Maybe they might attempt to do so, but I'm fearful that their incapacity may cause a problem.
Thank you. Mr. Salif?
Well, I have a question for Councillor Gerald. So, the former Chief Justice, being obviously a lawyer herself, a law professor, very, very outcome of the legal and judicial system of Liberia, would know the best lawyers, the best criminal minds in the country. Right? I mean, your observations are just struck me in terms of the competence of our legal team, just your fear you expressed. What would be responsible for assembling a team that is in these early stages exhibiting incompetence already?
Well, to answer you, some of the people are sympathizers. Some of the lawyers, I think they are sympathizers. Some of them went there to be able to say we are women lawyers. It fell. It fell.
Yeah.
There were people, I saw 1 or 2 lawyers there who said they live in the same community with Councillor Scott. Some of them were taught by Councillor Scott. I mean, all of these things don't matter to me at all because they do not set the premise for me to understand whether you have the legal competence. The other thing I need to go back for and say is that not every lawyer in Liberia is a trial lawyer. And not every lawyer in Liberia is a trial lawyer that understands the criminal procedure law and the practice before the criminal court. There are some lawyers who say they are corporate lawyers. Take our Minister of Justice, Councillor Musa Din. Councillor Musa Din is a corporate lawyer, meaning that he has no interest in what happened in the criminal court. There are others like that. There are other lawyers who I saw, again, I would have thought that they were quickly strategized and divided themselves into 2 parts. One group of lawyers before the magistrate making a motion to be admitted to bail. Because I think the strategy today was to arrest them when the court was about to be closed. And that's what they did. But you were anticipated, not joyful, because you went home yesterday, you were anticipated that they will arrest her the next day. In fact, the prosecution did not hide that. They said, we are coming. So if you didn't do that, and one group of lawyers preparing a summary proceeding against the magistrate to stop all of his orders by a circuit judge. If that was not done, that for me is very elementary. That for me is very preliminary. If everybody watched her being pushed into the pickup and just waved to her to go to jail, it doesn't mean she shouldn't go to jail. If that is she is rightfully charged. But you are a lawyer, you are supposed to defend your client no matter what crime he or she is charged with. Put everything before the court. I would have complained the magistrate on a summary proceeding today and get a circuit judge to issue an order to stop the sentencing until my complaint before the magistrate heard. I saw nothing like that. So I think these were sympathizers. These were former students who, like the justice and pretty much want to go talk to her. And the other, to answer clearly, Councillor, Gloria Muzuska is not a criminal lawyer. So she should not focus on how it happens or how it goes. Being on the Supreme Court is a different thing. When you're on the Supreme Court and you all, juggling around and talking, down to write opinion, you will discuss and maybe come together. But when you have that before you to represent yourself, you will want to, at least the people that want to represent me, I'm not saying they're not good lawyers. They might be good lawyers. But I'm just afraid that the missteps are a problem for me.
No, thank you. My question was, partly that she would know, and she, presumably knows the system, knows those who are specialized in criminal trial law and things like that. But I think you've explained it really well. The other point that Councillor Jarrett touched on was that police, in this presentation, Dennis, I saw a lot of assumptions. And, because there's iron door here, there's iron door here. Yeah. So it was not possible for anyone to have entered. I hope the police has something that we haven't heard or seen. Otherwise, like the councillor said, I didn't make sense to me.
Right. I mean, I was looking at that and thinking, even in Walmart, even in places like homeless people, they don't have keys to your door. There's no break-in, but sometimes they enter at a time you least expect when you don't lock the door. And someone who wants to commit a crime, maybe they can enter at a time when the door was open and stay there for a day or two, hiding somewhere. So there are a lot of things that can happen, but what they were basing on is since there is no forced entry, since the doors are locked, so those who commit the crime should be inside. And since 3 persons were inside, all 3 of you are charged with murder.
Scott.
But Dennis to just also make comment on this. I agree with Ahmed on this. That I think the government, there were a lot of assumption in the presentation. So for me, part of the doubt I have when I watched it yesterday, they talk about private security guard being in the yard, right? So why the private security guards are not arrested? Because they will actually be in the know of somebody entering and leaving. If they didn't see it, that's fine, but it could be part of it. So in my mind, the government is assuming that if we can find clear evidence linking an intruder to this, because of how fortified the building is, this crime could have only been committed by those who live in. So the must have knowledge of it. So we're going to just put it in jail, try to probably break their spirit and see if somebody will confess among them. Then we'll use that person as state witness. But I would say take the private security guys also with them, because they were in the yard. They mentioned that in their presentation. You know, they heard the noise in the building, and I think they try to forcefully enter, you know. So, and I mean, I listened to it. So, but the other thing I want to end on is, I don't quite agree with Councillor Jewel exception. There are about 30 lawyers that have signed on as volunteer lawyers. Yes, I agree. Not all lawyers are into criminal proceeding, but in that, you have Councillor Lavla Supu, a former Solicitor General. He knows about criminal proceeding. On that list, you have Councillor Augustine Fire, a former Assistant Solicitor General. He was Assistant Minister for Legal Affairs at the Ministry of Justice for years. Okay, so he knows the criminal. He's been Gross Card lawyer from day one, you know. So, I mean, I'm not going to talk about the rest of the lawyers, but at least these 2 lawyers, Supu has been in so many criminal trials, even as a consultant, as a contractor for government, besides being Solicitor General. So I would not want to discount that these people are just incompetent. They are making a careless missteps. I'm not a lawyer, but I will not jump to that conclusion yet.
Right. And a question was asked about Mayor Koji and Valley Teller, who were also named. And he said they have nothing, they have not established anything linking them to the case. So it's like an elimination method. Since it's not Valley, since it's not this, so it got to be somebody inside. I don't think that was strong.
But they also said they are not ruled them out, but at this point, their investigation has not established.
No, they are out. Conor Mulba.
Right, we charged already.
We don't have any evidence against them, so they are no longer part of this case.
No, so, but here what happened first. Yeah. In the first instance, the police did not send for them. It was based on Councillor Jeru Verdia statement or allegation against Jefferson Koji. That Jefferson Koji, through Councillor Arthur Johnson, took himself and said, well, I'm being accused. I'm going to the police to report myself with my lawyer. Let them tell me if I have any part to play here. That's how that whole thing started. The police did not send for him.
Let me
was calling.
Then let me just add another fact. Councillor Scott, prior to this, the death of Chalo Musu, had been engaged with doing little work in her house. In fact, there were people who generator man, painter, small carpenter work here, there, you know, and people from the outside have been retained or hired on a daily basis by her. And so the police, hearing about that when the case happened the first time, they want to arrest the lead person who had that contract, that daily contract, and I think 2 other persons, and brought them to the police. I think they kept them for like 3 days or 2 days, and then they released them. So the idea that the place could be locked and nobody could enter, that is a flawed. That you don't know who goes in on a daily basis. The other thing that, again, as a lawyer, I will, if I'm representing, say, Mr. Bungalow, I'm responsible to ensure that Mr. Bungalow does not go to jail. That includes doing everything possible. I agree, Super will be in a lot of cases. Were they all not sitting down when Councilor Gloria Scott was taken to jail today? Was Fire not part of the group that was standing there when Councilor Gloria Scott was put in the pickup?
I think my point is,
the other thing too is,
my point is to say these people don't have the capacity, they show incompetence.
No, I say I'm afraid of the capacity.
So
right, but let's look at the other charges
that's
against
what I
her.
disagree with.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Established. You are in fact the best criminal lawyer other than those people listed on that, and which I don't want to agree with.
Right, and you have the right.
Yeah.
I just want to ask a question about other aspects of the investigation or even the evidence gathering. You know, in Liberia, everybody has iron doors. In the rainy season, and based on the facts that we have read and heard, this crime supposedly occurred during the night hours, right? During the rainy season, everybody, well, not even during the rainy season, because of armed robbery and the prevalence of crimes in the country, people secure their doors with these iron doors. That's why you have these iron doors. But criminals have also found a way to work around that. So armed robbery, robberies really do happen, right? Like somebody was telling me, people use acid, acid solution, to undo a very firm iron door, and they can easily enter. Right. We haven't heard anything about that. And also in terms of like forensic investigation, blood work, where was the body found? What was the victim wearing? Where were the laceration? How did it happen? Well, none of those things has been at least communicated publicly to for me to have read or heard. Maybe it has been communicated, but those are all important facts that could point to something, that could point to a potential suspect.
And in fact, the only time they were asked before they told them the victim was in the councilor bathroom. They were the victim. Yeah. And I thought that was crucial not to leave it out, from the presentation.
Yes.
We never heard of murder weapon, nothing.
That is one reason why you need competent lawyer. That is one reason why you're not to wave at your client when that client went to jail. That is a reason why today I am certain that Councilor Gloria Musso-Scott and all of those who were charged are entitled to bail. Do you know there are people that believe that in murder cases there can be no bail? Which is untrue.
Yeah, the reporters were saying that. The reporters that were going live, even our FOL, I think it was one of the other ones I listened to too, said somebody, Fabian Queer from ELBC, another reporter interviewed her about it. She said, well, this is the highest, it's a capital offense in Liberia. It's not bailable.
And Councilor, I want us to throw in, before we let you go, throw in the other charges, right? Criminal conspiracy and making false statements to law enforcement. What about those two?
Again, it goes back to who we're charging. Murder supersedes or trumps the rest of the other charges. But what I have seen over the years from the Ministry of Justice run by Mrs. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf and maybe Mr. Taylor onto the current Ministry of Justice, they will throw in many charges hoping that some of them can remain. That's what I've seen. Our law provides that a defendant or defendant must be notified as to why he or she is tried. You don't run around with why would, if you have, unless you want to prove criminal conspiracy that they connived, they sat down together, they planned, and they decided to murder Jallow, bring witnesses. Let the witnesses prove that. Bring the murder weapon. Bring the clothes that Shiloh had on. But if you don't do that, my fear is that once the lawyers for the defendants are steps behind the prosecutor, there will be always a problem for the litigants.
So, Councillor Jewell, in this case, if they cannot prove murder, but they can prove the rest, will she still be guilty? Or if they can prove murder, the whole thing is dismissed? How does that work?
Well, it depends upon the facts they present. If they can't prove murder, the next stage will be manslaughter, meaning something like lesser than murder.
Right, but you didn't charge for murder, right? So you won't even talk about manslaughter, right?
Well, no, you charge depending upon the facts during the trial. If the facts that they present would elevate the fact that manslaughter was committed instead of murder. Because mind you, when you talk about murder, you must talk about the intent to commit a crime. You must be able to establish the intent, which is difficult to do unless you got sufficient witnesses to prove that Gloria Scott, for some purpose, had the intent, along with 3 other family members, to murder Shiloh. Maybe what? To be president. Maybe what? To be Chief Justice again. And then you got to establish all of those kind of things. But if you judge, again, my fear is that the government, if it doesn't have a case, the interest is to arrest her, disgrace her, put she and her family in jail, and watch. Librarians should pay attention. Once she's in jail, whether the prosecution will go after having filing a motion before the court to ask for a special jury, even though the grand jury is not sitting right now. That's what the prosecution should have done. Even though the grand jury is not sitting right now, they could have filed a motion to court and asked the court to establish someone, 15 group of people to come in to sit as special jurors.
Yeah, but Councillor, my question here is, because that's why people are very careful what they charge, because we've seen it here. So if you charge something that it is not, nobody is going to reduce it to manslaughter. That means it's dismissed.
I'm not saying the court will reduce it. I'm saying, say during trial,
right,
the evidence produced tend to lean or point to manslaughter.
But you can change your charges.
No, you cannot change your charges. But what the judge will look at, considering the facts, and the jury will go ahead and vote. If they think the facts lead much more to manslaughter, they will vote. If not, in fact, if you have a very good lawyer, again, after the production of evidence by the state, you file a motion to acquit the defendant.
Right, but what I'm arguing here is manslaughter will not even be in the picture. The jury will not be called to vote on manslaughter. It's either murder or acquitted.
No, if you prosecuting, you can ask the court to instruct the jury. So part of your instruction will be listening to the facts and the circumstances, the documentation presented before court. If you, members of the jury, find that the defendant as charged committed murder, vote and convict them of murder. If you find otherwise, that the facts point much more to manslaughter, vote and say manslaughter. If you find nothing at all, acquit them. So there will be instruction. Those have the right to give instruction.
Councillor Jewell, I just wanted to make a case. When I listened to you earlier, you said at this moment there's no grand jury sitting, right?
Correct.
So that's why they have to proceed to the magisterial court.
No, they did not have to proceed there.
What they have to do in this case?
So if, again, I'll go back. Even though the grand jury is not sitting, once the state can establish how compelling it is to public interest to have a special jury to sit and hear the facts to indict defendant Gloria Musu Scott and her 3 relatives, they would have filed a motion before court analyzing or stating that a special jury is needed in spite of the fact that a grand jury is not sitting.
Okay, so in this case, let's assume they don't have a compelling evidence, so they didn't go for that. So they go to Monrovia City Magisterial Court to begin there, because there's no grand juror, impaneled grand juror to look at this case, to look at the evidence government has, right? So there is no trial here. These are all preliminary stuff. There is no trial. So some of the things you're speaking to here are things that will come really during trial. Some of the arguments you're making. So I listened to another lawyer who was on Spoon Network earlier today, and he explained similar thing on this. He said basically they have to move now, maybe tomorrow, as early as tomorrow, depending on what the lawyer will do, to begin to look at preliminary examination of what the government has, because there is no grand jury indictment, and based on that, the magistrate, once they look at the weight of what government has, they can even now file for a bill or whatever legal relief they can seek, but it's beyond the magistrate. The magistrate will now forward the case to criminal code A or whatever, which code higher, which you presume jurisdiction of the case. So that's why he explained this evening. I listened to him. So I think
so I have never said there's a trial.
No, but some of the arguments you made now, I think there are arguments that could be sufficiently made during trial.
There can be no trial before the magistrate court.
No, because I know that. I know murder cases is beyond the jurisdiction of the magistrate court.
Yes.
Even the argument you were making that at this time there are Liberians who believe that a murder case is non-biddable, because not everybody is a lawyer.
Right.
If I tell you today the unemployment rate in Liberia is low, you say to me that the unemployment rate in Liberia is high. In fact, it's 90%, when it's actually probably 4 or 5%. And you argue with me, because I'm a statistician. I know how you crunch the number. I know the definition of what employment or what unemployment is. The public doesn't know.
Right.
So if I speak on that, they will say, hey, this guy is preaching voodoo economics.
But the real thing, you just have to be careful how you quote Spoon lawyers.
I'm quoting Lamin Fagon.
That's what I'm saying.
Those are preliminary things that Jerry is speaking to.
He's a very smart, intelligent lawyer.
Yeah. I will. Anyway, I don't want to go
So,
there.
Councillor,
Thank you. Go ahead, Doctor. So we can take leave of Councillor Joey.
I was going to ask if there's any chance that we should go home tomorrow.
There's what now?
Could she get up tomorrow and go home?
I think by
Could
tomorrow.
Get out tomorrow and go home.
Yeah, if the lawyer will go and file a motion tomorrow to admit her to bail, it should be one of the first things they should do, I assume, when the court opens by 8 o'clock in the morning. File a motion and have the judge to pass on that motion. And if the judge, again, I assume, knowing the magistrate, this is a magistrate that replaced the magistrate who ruled in the Costa case that the government searched Costa property wrongly. And so he was about to suppress the evidence, and the next day they remove him. They're saying to somewhere around Boca Jira West, whatever they're saying, and brought in one magistrate who is a yes magistrate. So I would never trust that magistrate. I would have my complaint prepared to file his complaint before criminal court C, his Honor Blamo Dixon, to be able to stop everything else. And my answer could be yes, depending upon what the lawyer do tomorrow. If they don't do anything, then she will stay in jail. Mind you, again, as I said, people believe that in murder cases, the defendants are not entitled to bail. If the lawyers believe that way, the client will stay in jail when the trial continues.
Thank you, Councillor Joey. The intention was to spend 30 minutes. We spent an hour, but thank you so much. It's been and that's why people should watch Focus on Liberia, so that we bring you the best. We'll take a short break and listen to the son of Councillor Gloria Mususka talking about politics, and that will be a segue to our topic for today.
Thank you, guys. See you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, done. See you guys.
Thank you, Councillor.
No audio.
Welcome back to Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. Gentlemen, there have been a lot of things happening. The vitriol in our political discourse, people are insulting. And now, if you go to Liberia, sometimes you see what many will call deception or dishonesty. You wear 5-party t-shirt, you go to this meeting, you change, you turn it around, you join the other one. And sometimes the language you will use, we also see a lot of what some call party hopping. You're in this party, as the tide moves, you join this party, and you go on and on and on. People will insult, people will lie, and people will do all kinds of things. And when you ask them, they say that's politics. So tonight, I want us to discuss briefly what is politics? What constitutes politics? What are some of those things when people do, we say, that is not politics? That's criminal, or that's slander, or is this one or that one? So that's the discussion I want us to have. So let's begin by discussing what is politics. Let me start with our governance consultant on politics, Mr. Sharif.
Well, your question could be a complicated question. I understand the context in which you are asking, because if you ask what's politics, social scientists, political scientists will start to scratch their heads, because all kinds of ideas are running through their minds, right? The academic stuff. But politics itself, so you are speaking in the context of electoral politics, like campaign politics and such, right? Politics in governance in general, it has to do with how decision making and allocation of resources, those who have power distribution, ability to use public power that's been entrusted to you in a representative democracy, to be able to exercise authority over public resources and provide goods and services to the citizens, and basically execute a social contract between those who are governing and those who are governed, those who have elected somebody to be their representative, whether in the executive leadership like the presidency, or whether you let legislators in the first branch of government. So in that context, yes, you're talking about politics in terms of people who are exercising power, representative power in a representative democracy to make decisions and allocate resources on behalf of the people. In terms of electoral politics, you're talking about competitive politics. So that's very different. The political discourse, right? I think your question also borders around political discourse. What is a civil political discourse versus what is negative political discourse? For instance, what is negative campaigning, or what is acceptable standard of political campaigning and political advocacy or political speech. So political speech can be very negative, it can be destructive, it can be vitriolic, like you said, vitriol, like those who are name calling, those who are shaming people. Sometimes it may not be an illegal speech because speech is protected, but those speech protection has its own limit. We can talk about that, but they can take that protected speech to an extent that goes beyond civic discourse, goes beyond what's accepted in a public dialogue, in a public space. So in that context, politics is electoral politics is a competitive process whereby you communicate your own ideas and show contrast, as opposed to, to show that you are better, you have better ideas, you're a better candidate, you have better leadership abilities, you will govern, you will deliver better for the people, and why they should vote for you. And then do opposition research on your opponent, not to bring them down, but to show that you're better than them in terms of ideas, in terms of abilities, and teams that you assemble. That's that kind of exercise of political discourse that you're asking that should happen ideally in electoral politics. But what we see in Liberia, many African countries, it's even here in the US, not just African countries, to be fair, is vitriolic politics, vitriolic language on civil discourse and negative campaigning that could really result to violence. At times, it could threaten electoral security and such.
Thank you. And so, preparing for this, I was also reading, and I came across, just as you said, many definitions of politics. What is politics? Some would say politics is the act and science of making decisions for a group of people, often through competition and conflict. And others say politics is defined as who gets what, when, and how.
Mm-hmm.
Some say politics is a process of competitive claims making by rival parties with the aim of mobilizing support to put these programs into action. And just like we learned in grade school that when Aristotle said, every man, you are a political animal, right? So they say politics exists wherever people interact with one another to make decisions that affect them collectively. Different definition of politics, different things going on here. So, Mr. Gonglo, what is your understanding, or how do you break down, if you want to talk to anybody, that this is politics, this is political system, this is politics? What will you say politics is in your own word? In my village, the equivalent of politics in my language is deception, backbiting, and that's the language, because the word that is closer to it is backbiting, talking behind people, and that's what politics is. How will you break down the definition of politics to someone in Glay, Mr. Gonglo?
Well, I think, thank you, Dennis. I think across the different villages and hamlets in Liberia, I think we have some things in common. Lack of better understanding of what politics is, because even though our people have been involved in politics, making decisions on allocations and leadership, but they don't call it politics. The sad thing is, we probably don't have a need for politics in many of the ethnic groups. I mean, I stand to be corrected here. I'm not too sure if I know of the need for politics in Man, right? I'm not saying there's no need for politics in Man, so in the Man language. So it's possible, but because it's viewed like an outside imposition on how we do things and how we interact with each other. So even in the village, in our village, when we're kids, when the adults are making decisions, somebody who comes and maybe out of the general, that one person that is disagreeing, they say, that person a politician, they're a politician. I mean, so the way that person was pointed out was not in a positive way. That you are the person who disagree with everybody. Why everybody agree to you, politician? That kind of stuff. But let's look at what Aristotle said. I know Aristotle had evolving view on politics, but earlier on in Aristotle's life, this is how he defined politics. He said politics is a noble activity in which men decide the rules they will live by and the goals they will collectively pursue. So that collectivity in the definition is very crucial. And the fact that Aristotle was saying, hey, it should be an art and activities engaged in by noble men, not criminals, not people with evil intent against others. I know Aristotle over time in life he changed his view, and it's a long literature. But if you come in the light of our digital economy and the digital politics, I like to say digital politics because of social media. I would like to say digital politics. I think I have increasing fear about where Liberia is, because Liberia is one of the countries in Africa with the least digital penetration, with higher illiteracy rate. In the 90s, I remember Dr. Sawyer spoke about this when during the advent of the internet. I will just take a few minutes to go because probably Dr. Du who worked closely with Dr. Sawyer may remember that. I remember I attended one symposium where Dr. Sawyer spoke at that when he was interim president. He expressed a fear that there may be time that African country will become very unstable with the introduction of digital technology. That you may have one person sitting down in the jungle in Bapolo and calling BBC or View and say, I have 500 men under my control, we are moving on Monrovia. And it could just cause entire stampede in the country. But that's just one man because of access to digital technology. So other countries, they have developed technology to monitor, even to shut down Facebook or page, like Chinese do, other countries do. Liberia, we are not there yet. Our government is now pushing the mobile companies to bring in high-tech, quality high-tech that can actually shut down some of those dangerous websites that could maybe cause the entire nation to even go into chaos. And increasingly, the lack of investment, capital investment in technology and education, I have fear that it's one of the things that I have fear that Liberia may maybe going back to violence, because the misuse of the social media is increasing, and the language people are using to describe something that is even not significant and causing stampede. I will end on one example, even though it's a positive example. Henry Costa sat right here in Delaware State. Justina Taylor was being arrested and was taken to Calais Hospital for treatment, either by the order of the police or something. And after treatment, they would have brought her back to police. Henry Costa sat right here through digital, through social media. He actually did mobilize sufficient men to stop the government from taking her from the hospital. And that's how she ended in the US. You can see the impact of the digital politics. So I have my fear until we begin to improve and make capital investment. There are some radio stations that are behaving like Radio Kigali today in this election year in Liberia already. They are actually carrying on negative, aggressive propaganda that anybody can go crazy and even attack anybody on it. But government can take action because they don't even have the ability to do it. They don't have to.
Maybe government can take action because somebody will say that's politics, and that's what we are discussing.
No, because we have not even written sufficient laws on the use of the digital platform or gateway. So we don't have sufficient laws on that. So if you take action, there are so many lawyers looking for a case to make themselves popular. They will just go to court and say, where is the law?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dr. Duke, central in the definition of politics are keywords, right? Competition, conflict, and wherever there is competition, there is outmaneuvering, as long as you're doing things legally. So politics lends itself to this kind of thing. How do you outsmart people? How do you outmaneuver? How do you win a competition? So when these things are introduced, definitely the game is going to get dirty. What's politics to you?
Well, you could look at it okay, politics, I would say taking care of the people's business. That's about it, right? Taking care of people's business. Beside that, how to outsmart, I would say it's not so much about outsmarting your opponent than really getting to know your audience and your target audience. Because if you focus on your opponent, what are you doing? You always try to beat. If you say this and then you try to do that, but the audience may not even be listening to either of those things. So what do you want? Your competition goes to the audience. And let's say last week when Joel Howard Taylor called about, rebel and stuff like that. And then Yeke comes back and talk about how many men she must have had affairs with. And then you look at it and say, how's that politics? But they're not talking to you and I. They're talking to those guys, who bring water to them, those guys who run behind them. Those are the people. So they know their audience. They know people they're talking to. So it's not so much about outsmarting somebody or beating somebody to or something. It's just target your audience, message your policy to your audience, know when to talk to them, how to talk to them, and where to say what. And I think that's that would be the politics that I know of. And the rest, you leave it to people who will insult you. I don't know if any of you were in you were in Monrovia and probably in 2005. Salif campaign was attacked by everybody for war participation. Everybody was attacking on the war. We said, we're not going to respond to that.
Prostitute or harlot. They call her name.
Yeah. So
Dr. Fambula,
everybody campaign was those who brought war. I said we're not going to elect you on the basis of war. They will have never elected Charles Taylor. So let them talk about that. We focus on what we want to talk about. That's how we did it. We let them insult her on the war. She brought the war. Say, yeah, the people elected Charles Taylor. What do you think? So I think the message should be targeting your audience, know what your audience needs, where they stand, and where they are in their life, at the time you're speaking to them. But not focus so much on, insulting opponents and calling their names. Yeah, it's good. And, Donald Trump did it and got away with it because that base needed somebody like him, but it really doesn't always work.
From your examples,
Dennis, to add to what Du was saying is the reaction of Yeke Koluba. He did not go to the radio station. He started writing his yard. He called people to just being on Facebook, on YouTube. That's how we watch it, right? If he had gone to a former radio station, no manager would have allowed him to use the expression he used on the vice president, because then they could be sued maybe for allowing such expression. They could go after them legally. But on social media,
We go with it. So in the case of Yeke Koluba and Joel Howard Taylor, in the case of the campaign that you referenced, the language they were using, do you consider that politics, Dr. Duke?
Yeah, it's politics of the day. I mean, this is where we are. We are dealing with a generation of people. 60% of our voters were born during the war. Their values are different. Their schooling is different. Their education level is different. Their understanding of life, politics is totally different. And the way they want to get things done are different. So, they went from, their heroes are what? From Charles Taylor, Samuel Doe. Did people consider Samuel Doe good times? They say Samuel Doe time was a good times in Liberia. So that's the generation you're dealing with. I mean, those are even the older ones. The much younger ones were, say Taylor time was better than these times. So you're dealing with that generation. So they have their own language. They have their own understanding of the world. So you're not going to talk to them about anything that makes sense to you. That's not what they're going to vote for. They will vote for something different, totally different. And you know, they're hungry. Yeah, they vote for somebody who might promise something, but definitely, yes, I think they're talking to people who know, who want them to talk like that, because that's what he goes on the air. 15,000. It is you. Did you hear Yakuba? You did say, and then 5,000, 10,000, and then boom, it goes up in the air at no cost to no one. Nobody pays for anything. You cost me, I cost you, and then the kids love it, and they move on.
Good.
The attention span is the TikTok advertisement.
Mr. Salih, let me hear your view on this, because politics is getting to your people and be able to win them. Some say it's about winning elections. So whatever language you can use or whatever tactics you can use, like in the case of Yeke Koluba. So do you agree with Dr. Du that this is politics? Because you communicate with different audiences based on what they understand. And so that's...
But Dr. Duke is a communication man, so he understands also that elections have guidelines, right? I mean, that's in the democracy. That's why you have electoral management body, so that elections have guidelines, including how you communicate about your campaign, how so you can incite violence, for instance. And we also know that there is vitriolic politics. There is there are negative campaigns. Negative campaign ads are called names, and really can show the immorality of the opponent, that kind of thing. Yes, you want to communicate your ideas. So I always bring this on the show, that all politics local. I try to quote Tip O'Neill. But in that all politics is local, that's kind of what I'm hearing Dr. Duke say. Look, these young folks, you have to listen to them, speak their language. Because if you try to speak an Abdullah Dukle language to them, that they're not familiar with that. They think that Charles Taylor's time was Liberia's best days, right? Or Ellen Johnson days, man, people say that was normal days. Things are way better than under this administration. So the argument is, in order to win the election, then on the competitive side of politics, of campaign and electoral politics, you have to insult your opponent. You have to go uncivil. Now, I disagree with that aspect. I mean, you can communicate your message and show contrast and show that, because it's competition over power, who controls power at the end of the day, who wins, whose message holds water, whose message resonates, and therefore who the voters then vote. So I agree that you try to understand your audience, try to understand their needs, and craft your message to that audience so you can win them. In between that, though, there's a fine line that can be crossed. That's not to say people won't cross it. Mr. Gonglo just mentioned Radio Rwanda. That's why technology and communication and radio and media can be dangerous, but it can also be very effective as a communication tool. So politics, in the sense that you can tear the other person down in your process of trying to climb up. That's what I'm hearing.
And
well, it wouldn't be. I will agree with you. There's decency. You, as a candidate, you have to set your limit and say, I'm not going beyond this point in decency. Talking about people, no matter what they talk. Yeke Koluba didn't have to say that. He didn't have to say any of the things he said. He could have made his point without doing that. And I think that's the level of what you say. Okay, what's your level of decency in speaking or responding to insults? And that comes with a certain political maturity. But then again, it comes down to who you're talking to. If you and I, and we call Yekeba to talk to us about this, he would say something different. He would put it in a different way.
Right.
So it's I
think that's part of the problem with Aristotle's definition. I know politics has evolved. When he said this should actually be an activity that's engaged in by what? Or rule agreed on by noble men, So if you look like the statistics do give, that maybe about 60% of our voters today are people who were born in the war. The only good town they know of Liberia is Charleston town, probably, you know. And those of us who were born before that time, probably the good town will know of in relative terms. The good town we may know about would be in the 70s, right? But they know that the only good town to know is the 1990s. So it's a problem by itself. So now we have a situation where those who are making decision on our future, how we're going to govern, they don't fit in the Aristotle definition. You know, they are not the noblest men and women. They are not the people you would think that they will make opinion based on the character, the policy options the person is presenting.
But that's all part of politics, right? Because I said that's all part of politics, right? Well, if you are presenting these options, if you are presenting these policy prescriptions, and I know I want to win, and I don't have that. So what do? I don't have policy, so I make noise to attract people.
Not necessarily. Where do you draw the line, Dennis? It could be that just because you don't have this sophistication of those policy options that are convincing and contrasting,
right?
If we accept that negative, uncivil, vitriolic politics is politics, and that anything and all things are politics, where do you draw the line when someone starts to call for violence? When someone starts to say this is life and death, I'm targeting you, I see you, I'm targeting, and such a person has following. And this following, that's the message that, like Dr. Duke was saying, right? They were born in a particular generation. They're yet to really fully appreciate the consequences of some of the things that destroy the country that they have today, right? So my point is, yes, you can try to be competitive to win, but you just like free speech. Free speech is a constitutional right, but your free speech that hurts others, that infringes upon other people's rights, you can be held liable for that. You can't stand in a theater full of people and yell fire, and everybody stampede starts, and people trample over one another and they die. You're held accountable for that. That's free speech, but free speech is not free enough. And so we have to hold these politicians accountable and say, look, we understand that you would tear somebody down. That's your call if you don't want to be civil. But at the same time, if you cross the line, that could lead to the destruction of the state, for example. That's unacceptable politics.
All right, so let's look at another aspect of it. What you do to others. So we have some phrases that have become very common. One of these is politics is interest. So since politics is interest, I can switch side anytime depending on my interest, right? I can be for Salif today, tomorrow I'm for Gonglo, the next day I'm for Dr. Duke, because politics is interest. Is that politics, or is it deception, or is it you being unreliable?
Well,
Dr. Duke.
I'll give you, okay, I'll take it. Is politics in a context of Liberian politics where we're not fighting about ideologies, we're not fighting about, social values, we're fighting about who's going to promise more about building roads and stuff like that. In that situation, what can you do? What can you say? People don't have that kind of, we're not working with the ideas. We're working with personality issues. So it all comes down to, so you decide, okay, I'll go to Joe Boakai. Boakai promised to give me, my small party and I, 3-4 ministerial jobs.
Because
that's political interest. Or he say, we have that bridge linking us to Ivory Coast. Been there for 10 years. We need to fix it. And whoever promised to fix it, I'll say, okay, I'll go with you. So that's interest. I mean, that's what we call porks in the U.S. politics.
Right.
You put a pork, and then you get my vote. So I don't see the difference. It's a level, it's a matter of, at what level you do it. Here, people will now run to you for cash, but they will run to you and say, okay, we want a community center, we want a new hospital, and that's jobs. It's cash. If you look at it, it's actually cash because it's money into the community. When you fight for a hospital, a new hospital, of course, you're not fighting for $10 to put in your pocket, but Liberians are thinking at that level. We live at that level that we need $10 to buy a bag of rice. We need $20 to buy. That's where we think our politics is. And so that's where we function. So we can say this is politics, this is not. We have to contextualize everything.
So when we contextualize that in the US, it's politics, but when we contextualize it in Liberia, that isn't politics. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, for example, people, okay, the U.S. sanctioned Prince Johnson for play and pay, or pay and play, or whatever it is they call it. I say, okay, if that's a crime, who's the other guy? When somebody arrests you for stealing something, and then you say, oh, I sold it to John Brown, who knew it was stolen. You go after the man, right? You go after that person. So if you have sanctioned Prince Johnson for buying political favors, who did he buy it from? So we have to, when somebody say, okay, you want this vote for Ohio, you want Ohio District 5 to follow you? Well, we have this little factory that's been dormant for 5-10 years. Can you talk to the Japanese to come back, to talk to the Chinese people to come back? That's money for the community. Is it the same thing? Well, Prince Johnson took the money and put it in his pocket, but who gave it to him? Who's the other culprits? I'll leave you with that.
And that's politics. So, Mr. Gonglo, we're in a ULA election, right? And so we campaign in a certain state, and when they send their delegates, in fact, we help to transport them to Philadelphia for the elections. When they got there, they came to our headquarters and we're all happy. Then came in the people that we're running against, Mr. Cooney and his group. So the group we're running against went and literally bought those guys. And in the election, they voted for our opponent and they beat us.
Corrupt politics.
And when we asked, they said that's politics. Mr. Gonglo, is that politics? Because
no, that's not politics, that's criminality. In fact, bribery itself is a crime. So what you're alluding to here is a bribery. They actually bribe the people, But I just want to go back to what Du was saying earlier. I think part of the problem we have in Liberia is the fact that we do not have a different template to build our politics on. Our politics has been like this for centuries. Okay, so there's a guy who worked with Dr. Duden in the interim government. I think his name is David Kwe. I think he was either advisor to Dr. Sawyer or he was working with NSA. But I know he was on the 6th floor. David Kwe, I remember him. I used to research a lot of stuff. He wrote an article on why the PRC members could not succeed. He gave different reasons, but one of the reasons he gave was the way the governance process in Liberia is the same process the military try to follow and probably just step over. So they were bound to fail. They were bound to follow, to commit the same errors that the past government was committing, right? So if you look at our politics, where is the new? I mean, we don't have in Ghana and in other countries, people can point to political leaders and their message. Like you can point to Nelson Mandela and say, "Look, I fight white domination, just as I also fight black domination." Do we have that kind of message in Liberia to follow? No.
Yes, we do.
What is it? Show me one.
Yes, we do. I mean, the politicians that are now running, they all have messages, right? They all have things that they are saying, and even politicians before this time. So people have messages that they are presenting.
So for me, I somebody can challenge me on this. Maybe when the callers start to come in, I've looked at just what some of the candidates are saying. I know 2 candidates are really speaking out there. Cummings, Gonglo are really speaking out, not through surrogate. But Gonglo is very clear on what he wants to deconstruct the state. He's saying, look, we can talk on economic development in the mix of poor governance structure. We need to deal with the governance process first. We need to deal with the rule of law. We need to make the system accountable through other means that we can restructure the process. And in that means, the state, the economy will be at a stage to take off. But if we just leave the template, come and just use the same template to write the same old budget, say, yeah, this is how we allocate the budget. If you listen, I will encourage you to invite the former finance minister. He was on Spoon and he was on Class Reload. I listened to him. Boyma Kamara. He's a very honest young man. I work with him.
I don't want you to deviate a lot.
No, I want to say what he said. He talked about
what he said. Is it politics?
He said something fundamental about Liberia. That L.M. Johnson Sirleaf administration and the WIA administration, their policy on how to manage the state is the same, no difference. He said it's the same. They are just consumers. They just collect taxes and consume. No capital investment. They don't look at it. What they invest for the future is this little, and they collected billions of dollars over time. But they invest just this little because they just consume. That's why theft and corruption is so widespread in government, because so much lose money in our hand without planning for the future. Okay, so when you talk on the issue of politics, I think I will keep going back to Aristotle. We should let our politics be defined by the policy options that our candidates put forth, as opposed to what activists and militants push out there as bait, to excite the base. Because if we have followed that. We follow that, we elected Charles Taylor. We follow that, we elected WIA. Okay? So if we're going to make a change, then we have to begin to have a different narrative.
Mr. Sirleaf,
can I add something to that?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
I think, Gongolo, when you're comparing Liberia to Ivory Coast and Nigeria and Ghana, the difference is when those countries became independent, they went and said, okay, what do we want as a new country? They sat down and say, what do we want? We never had that chance. Liberia never had one to say, okay, settlement, colony, republic, and nobody sat and said, okay, after the coup, we have a chance to sit down and say, what new country do we want? Liberia never had that. We never had, there'd never been a real national conference on what is Liberia, where Liberia is going, what is the governance system that you want. And many of those countries in West Africa did that. When they became independent, they say, okay, we were a colony, now we're independent. What do we want? Where are we going? Guinea made a choice. Ivory Coast made a choice, and you can see the difference. We didn't make a choice. Nobody made a choice in Liberia. Nobody sat down since 1980 and said, what is the Liberian state? What is the governance system? So we went from taking one thing to put another thing. As Gongolo always said, he's like to say that the country is built on shaky foundations. So it's going to be shaky until you reform it.
Mr. Sirleaf, we often hear phrases like politics is a dirty game. Is that true? Or even if we take out the dirty, if politics is a game, who are the referees?
Yeah, when politics, that's a euphemism. Politics is a game, or it can even be a dirty game. That doesn't necessarily mean, so like what I was talking about earlier on civil nature or vitriolic nature of it. Politics is about negotiation, Dennis. Politics is about competition. It's about ideas. It's about negotiation. That's the gamemanship aspect of it, right? If you transported people from one state to come as their delegates to vote for you, they got there. It's one person, one vote. They go in the booth. You don't know who they will really vote for, right? And other people, other than the bribery aspect, but if other people were able to just convince them and, to have conversation with them and say, look, we understand these guys brought you here, but actually they are the wrong team. We are a better team, and here's why. And these people are outstanding, moral Liberian citizens who want the best for EULA, and they voted for who they thought were the best candidates. That's a game of politics. So it's dirty in that respect, that deceptive, because you expected one thing and there you are, you got another outcome. Politics could be a dirty game. Also, an example would be in campaign politics, where we advise candidates to do opposition research. Know everything you can know about your opponent. Know their strength, know their weaknesses, so that you are able to counter that and contrast that in your own messaging. You know their weakness already, so that you're able to show strength in their weakness. You already know their strength, so that you know your own weakness, hopefully, and so you know their strength, so that you're able to match that strength and say, you may think that this, but look at me, I'm even better than this. So as you do all of that, it's a matter of game. It's a matter of really strategic thinking and being competitive, designing messages, identifying what do the people need, what is it that you can deliver, how can your ideas be palatable and agreeable to these people. All of that's why you hear people say politics is game, is a dirty game.
Right. Dirty game means you can promise someone and don't deliver or deceive that person.
No. Now you see, we have to decouple some of these. So you put like earlier when you asked Dr. Duke the question, right? You're looking at institutionalism, and then you blended that with something else. You talk about ideologies, and these institutional ideologies, like political institutions, on the basis of which you grow people, you groom them to leadership, so that they so believe in this way of thinking and governing and government. They believe in this model of government, that nothing will bring them to your model of government, because they truly believe in this as a matter of ideological and philosophical leaning, right? And even if they have the opportunity to be in government, that's how they will govern, because they truly believe this economic model, this government model is better than the other, right? So you have to build that over time. So what Dr. Duke said rightly is that we don't have that, because we haven't built our systems like that. We haven't groomed our young people like that, like succession planning, even, for instance, right? We base it around personality. What happened? Dr. Cassette died, his party is split, his people are all over the place. So if they were not behind Cassell, they were behind an idea and ideals, and that's what brought them together, they would have no reason to scatter as a party. So politics, the dirty game, is just a euphemism to say that, look, if you're not careful, you're not strategic, you don't think ahead, you don't do your research, you're not a smart individual in this space, people outsmart you. And they could do it tearing you down, if that's what gives them the advantage. I'm not saying that is all right. I'm just saying that happens even here in the US. We see that, right? I mean, if you took a look at Joe Manchin, for instance, the Democrat who was always on the fringes, right? A lot of times he's not following President Biden and the White House's messaging. He has his own personal objective. Who knows? Maybe he wants to run for president at some point.
He's going to run for president.
Yeah, the people of West Virginia. He's saying the people of West Virginia who voted for me, these are the kinds of electorate that I have. They will not vote for me if I agree to your policy. These other Democrats are radical Democrats. I don't follow their views, right? And then sometimes it comes in the middle. So that's the dirty part of the politics there. You said, this guy's in my party. He's supposed to automatically be a vote for me.
That's not dirty, though.
No, your definition of dirty, Dennis, mean that's why I said there's perception in there too, right? You may perceive that if somebody deceived you, then that's a dirty politics. Well, if somebody is in your party and there's an issue that you believe it's not negative to them, they should align with it, and for some personal reason or some other reason that for which you think will bring advantage to them, they're not aligning with you. In the sense, that's a dirty game of politics.
Yeah.
So my second question there was, if politics now is a game, who are the referees?
The referees are the people. The referees are the citizens. The referee, because again, at the end of the day, you have to remember the objective of politics. The objective of politics is to attain power and the exercise thereof. The exercise of that power to allocate resources to the benefit of the population. That's really, you can define, you can have 100 definitions, competition, conflict, you know, the study of government, all of that. You can define all kinds of philosophical or political thoughts and thinking around politics. At the end of the day, action politics. So electoral politics, governance politics, those are action. Action politics is about exercise of power, the attainment of power and the exercise of that power. How you get there, it takes competition, it takes strategy.
Yeah, but Dennis, if I may add, I think we need to be careful here when we discuss in particular the U.S. Because the U.S., we all know historically, these states, the way they came together as a federal state, I mean, it has its own history. Different states have different interests. And of course, the Congress is, you know, they are really, really independent in many ways. They stand out. If one party has control, the House of Representatives, if and one party has control, another party sitting in the White House, your budget, your expenditure is going to be under pressure. They're going to really give you the help for your, you know, for your leadership. But one of the things that is missing in our case in Liberia is the fact that historically, like Drew said, we didn't come together after the coup to say, let's sit together. What do we want for our country? You know, so our politics kind of got influenced by the military in all of ways. And then the Civil War set in, which actually came with it, the mentality of the 1990s, greed or pursuit of material.
I mean, why after the coup, Mr. Gongo, I'm just curious. Why after the coup? Why not when they signed the independence of 1847 into the formation of the state? Why they didn't come together? They didn't come together to say, what do we want?
Yeah, but Ahmed, the right assumption is, and you know this better than I probably do, the settlers who were at the formation of the state, they embrace we African brothers they met. You know, there's so much literature on that, you know, on the class system they introduced. So they didn't want to have anything to do with us. Even Wilmer Bladden even wrote on that, okay, and predicted some of the things that will happen later in the history of
you say the settler didn't want anything to do with
Dennis. You know the different civil wars that were fought. You know that we don't. But there's not a forum to go into the history. Okay, so. Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is, let's look at Sierra Leone, let's look at Ghana, let's look at Nigeria, let's look at some of the countries around us. The leading political parties there, they actually have economic platform, you know, platform that they actually pitch to the voter. Not the politics of Yeke Koluba, not the politics of some of the young people who just insult. Look at South Africa today, Julius Nyerere, Julius Malema. I listened to this boy on Chesley Keremy. I love this guy. I wish he was a Liberian. There was an interview you just have recently with
you got people like Julius Malema in Liberia. You got me. Let's switch gear here. I want to bring in our callers.
Yeah, I know you want to bring him, but Julius Malema is very clear that, listen, the EFL is putting for a policy that land repossession without compensation. And that's why South Africans are voting for him on. And the interviewer said, look, many white people want to run away. They say if he becomes leader, he said, no. They said about Mandela. And the reason is not that they fear me or they fear Mandela, but they just don't want to see an independent black person. That's all. So they left, and some of them didn't return, and I will be happy if they leave because I'm independent. I'm not going to submit to the Western power. So let's have that kind of rhetoric, that kind of advocacy in our politics. Let's have leaders on election year that say, look, this is what is wrong with Liberia. If I'm elected, this is what I will do. Like Councillor Gongo is doing. That, hey, I'm going to restructure the judicial system. I'm going to restructure the police. I'm going to make the police accountable to the public.
Right. So that tells you that politics is interest. Right. Okay. Let's
No,
go
no
to.
interest.
I was really going to say. Yeah.
But somebody may say that he had a chance to do it.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
the.
no, no.
Hold
Somebody will say
on, Mr. Gonglo. I don't want us to go into that. I think
yeah,
you should
okay,
join us on Friday night so we can have the Gonglo
well, I'm not
ANC
qualified to
debate.
represent him.
No, but every time you are going to it, so I want you to be free and talk. We don't stop you from doing that. There are three areas in politics, right? You have the rules, you have the reality. These are the facts, and then you have the choices that participants make, right? So one politician or one author referred to that as like a chess game. He said, chess game, we have the rules, and the rules are straight, right? This is what you do. And the rules will not change, right? Based on no one person will change the rules. Then you have the reality. Those are facts. You have to move this piece this way. That doesn't change. That's reality. But the choices participants make, that will determine the outcome. We all start at the same, but the way you play, the choices you make will end up you losing or winning. So we have the rules, but in politics, the politicians change the rules on the fly to benefit them. So really, if I look at it, politics is designed the way my people understand it in the village, right? To be deception, backbiting, outmaneuvering, and maybe we're just trying to polish it, right?
Unethical. Well, I mean, you may say we're trying to polish it. So, for example, I listened to OKFM this morning, I think it was. So, this guy, Julius J, I really like him, one of the outstanding journalists in the country, just like Dennis Jah. He said he has been advocating forever that opposition legislators have the power to actually influence the executive branch of government. For example, budget, the budget law, such as budget performance reports and things like that. He said their parties could actually influence them, their meanings, these representatives, these senators, their parties that send them, that supported them, could influence how they perform and how they behave in the legislature. But that's never happened until 2 days ago. Presidential candidate, Mr. Joseph Boakai, had a meeting of several senators and representatives and made this very case that, this president is now a lame duck president. Don't allow his appointments to pass easily, scrutinize the budget, insist on budget performance report and things like that. And these Unity Party lawmakers are actually implementing that, and they're seeing the difference. They're seeing an impact. So the journalists are asking, so why now? Why haven't they done it all the while when we're asking? So, I say this is just to your point, then, is that people in the village say, oh, yeah, you can fix the rule today and then tomorrow move from behind it. That means that you're deceptive and dishonest, unethical. That's politics in a sense, because these very legislators voted and passed the budget. Right. It's the same budget now. They're saying, until you can show us performance report, we can't confirm this other nominee. We can't confirm this other nominee. So somebody asked the question, well, but they voted for the budget. Now, why are they insisting on budget? To me, it doesn't mean because you voted to pass the budget that you can insist on budget performance. That's when you should, in fact, insist on performance report and things like that. So in the eyes of somebody, they could say this is very consistent with how our people think of politics. That's just a matter of deception, unreliability, unethical, and all of that. That very negative aspect of it. That can be part of the game as well, but it's beyond that.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to take few calls here. Time is fast spent, so let's get our first caller, and you all can guess. Elvis Morris. Elvis, you are live.
Thank you, Mr. Jai, and hello to your panelists. Firstly, I want to say, when it comes to the issue of politics and vitriolic politics in Liberia, I think, for me, my little analysis of it is that the price or the reward for winning political office in Liberia is way too high. So people tend to do anything. Almost like for them, it's a generational shift in terms of wealth for their family. So everything depends on it. So somebody can say the worst thing because they know if they get the reward at the end of the day, it will be well worth it. So the reward for politics in Liberia is way too high because we're so poor. Contrast that to the United States. Yes, there's vitriol in the American politics. But most of these people who are running for political office, most of them are millionaires, doing very well in their private business, in their private affairs. So politics is just all about power for them rather than wealth. But take, for example, when Donald Trump called Ted Cruz's father, Rafael Cruz, try to implicate him in the murder of JFK, called his wife, Heidi Cruz, ugly. So, Trump was a vitriol. He threw a lot of vitriol in his politics. So in America, in this very advanced country, there's a lot of vitriol in the politics in this country as well. And then quickly, with the Shana Musu situation, I think the government have an uphill battle to climb because I think charging murder is really hard to prove. I think, like Mr. Councilman Jiwa said, maybe manslaughter or negligent homicide, which is, for example, if you're sitting there and your son falls down from the upstairs and you bust your head open, he's still alive, but you don't hurriedly go and seek help to save that child's life. You just look at him while he's dying, and you don't do anything. You could be negligent in his death. So I think perhaps this girl died from a loss of blood. When somebody stabs, I don't mean they're going to die right away. They're bleeding out. You got to get help as soon as possible. The Chief Justice, who is head of household, didn't do everything in her power to get that girl to the hospital as soon as possible. Rather, she was making phone calls to try to maybe cover tracks. Maybe somebody in her household did it, but she was trying to make sure that that person will be protected just in case. Then I think she will be culpable in that manner. But I don't think she actually took a knife and stabbed the child. But definitely she's covering up something within the household. But good discussion. I will leave it there.
Thank you. Darling Warwood, you're live. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so I just want to speak to the issue of the Councilor Gloria Mususka situation. Folks within the opposition community have been crying foul for a very long time since the inception of this law. They've cried that the CDC-led administration is not tough on crime. It's not tough enough. This one time that the government, that the Justice Department tried to be tough on crime, these very opposition politicians are crying that this is political. This is witch hunt. They are witch hunting opposition political parties, lawyers, this and that. So then my question is, what do you guys want? Because all I know for the last 5 years, all we have heard from people is that the Justice Department is not tough on crime. The police is weak. And now the police, for once, flexing their muscle, the Justice Department is working, trying to give justice to the deceased, and the same people are crying. Like I saw the chairman of the UP party at the Memorial Central Prison being very rude to the police. Start trying to force a way in to enter the prison compound. The lady is in there, I want to get in, I want to speak to her. Hello, this is an institution. We have visiting hours. And you have to have a appointment. You don't go in there because you think you are party chairman of some political party. It means you are above the law. You can go anywhere at any time. So I think this is still deception. This is unfair to the Justice Department. And I think people should keep their opinion to themselves. Well, you can say whatever you want. But we should all watch that this issue play out. Like this other guy they call Rockefeller, he said he's a pathologist. He was complaining that why they released Princess Cooper autopsy report, why have they not released Shana Musu autopsy report? And the reason is very simple. Princess Cooper, the police investigated and found out that there was no probable cause. Nobody was charged. They had no pending investigation. But this case with Shana Musu, there is an ongoing criminal investigation. You cannot release autopsy report. If you do that, you will be undermining the integrity of the case.
Okay.
So I'm just saying this to the opposition political party. You guys need to take some chill pills. You don't want the government the Justice Department to be tough on crime. Now they are being tough on crime. So let us sit back and watch the process. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Let me take my last caller here. That's Wilfred. Wilfred, you're live. What's your phone name?
Hello?
Hello, go ahead. Just turn turn your device off.
Yes, I'm Wilfred. Wilfred Sammy Ganye, calling from Massachusetts. Although I have the other number. Actually, thank you, Mr. Dennis. Wilfred Sammy Ganye.
Yeah, turn off your device. You
for bringing me on, for recognizing me.
Wilfred.
I'm a little bit disappointed. I'm disappointed in the brain politics. As you know, politics is nothing about competition. Yes.
Turn off your device.
Politics is nothing about competition. And what our people should be doing.
Maybe to turn off his radio or computer. He probably doesn't know what he's talking about.
I can turn it off?
No, the radio, what you are listening to, what you are using to monitor the show, turn that off so we can hear you better.
Turn off your radio or your TV.
Yeah, but you are still watching the program. Turn off the program and only talk through the phone.
Okay. Okay. Are you getting me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Dele, for recognizing me. My point I want to raise tonight is that I'm very disappointed in our politics. When we talk about politics and competition, ideas that you bring forward that will bring development to our people, to win your opposition, to win the opponent, so that we can succeed in our political undertaking. Like, how can we develop the country? So every presidential candidate should be able to come up with a platform that will help to improve the lives of our people. But even, I'm very surprised when people even talk about Yega Koluba. Yega Koluba is not that significant in the equation because his expression does not represent his position that he's occupying in district number 10. So a person like that, I'm praying that he be voted out because he's not civilized. His attitude is very unacceptable. It is not. Let's say it is not. It's a complete violation of our condition. So I would like to recommend to those people that are in the competition, senator, representatives, the presidential candidates, put forward ideas that will help to improve the lives of our people, the economy in the country, how our children go to better school, how we can improve our agriculture process, buying rice from other importing rice. These are things you should come up with. That will improve the lives of our people, change the lives of our people. That's what I call tonight. To let you know. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. All right. You heard from our callers. I think you don't have to respond. Let's quickly go to our Tabata session, and then we draw down the curtains. Mr. Salif, you go first.
But Dennis, the Elvis Morris, though, it sounded like...
Okay, go ahead. You can respond.
It was obvious in the foregone conclusion that Shalom Musu died accidentally or negligently, and somebody's covering up. We just don't know. We don't, yeah. I think FOL, you should have said something, or you should say something to that effect. That we don't know the whole facts, right? We don't know what she stated, whether it's the fact or not. The case is still being investigated, so we should wait and see. That's the only reaction that I wanted to give.
Thank you. That's
so is it Tabata session now in terms of
it's Tabata session.
Yeah, let me try this. Yeah, I didn't even prepare one Tabata today, but I don't know. Maybe Dr. Duke can go then.
Dr. Duke, go first then.
Remind
The
me.
Tabata is the arrest and imprisonment of former Chief Justice Musu Gloria Scott. That's the biggest Tabata. When I say this, when I talk about her as being Chief Justice at the time when she doubled the sentence of these people who were falsely accused, because Charles Taylor actually freed them 2 years later on. It was to talk about this importance of the justice system, how justice system can break down the country if you're not careful. Everything you do, it all goes back to the history. That sentencing of Baibala, 12 of them, was the one that gave the Ivorians the notion that, oh, yes, our brothers told us they're being eliminated in Liberia, so we're going to give them guns. That's how model came about. For 2 years, Ivorians refused to give any money to model people. They said, no, you're not going to use our territory. But after that thing happened, they say, yes, they killed 200 people on Kamchasu Road. They buried them in a mass grave. And then you see all our leaders in jail. And the Ivorians say, oh, yes, these are our brothers. We cannot let them be killed. So judiciary is very, very important in the country. It is what breaks everything. The judiciary have to be independent. It has to be professional. And people have to say, yes, let the justice take his course because we know it's going to be true. We're talking about, it's politicized. We're all talking about politics today. Why? Because we have developed the perception that our justice system is broken. It's corrupt, inefficient. We wrote back in 1999, we're talking about the same justice system. Said it's corrupt, it's inefficient, it's manipulated by the president. Just the same word people using today against the same people. So we keep doing the same thing because we have the wrong formula for statehood. We have not questioned our statehood. We have not asked the tough questions. When Momon Sirleaf, you asked the question, why after the coup? It was after the coup that everybody in Liberia was given a chance to participate in party politics. And that was the time to say, where are we going with this new nation? It never happened. So we keep having a justice that's corrupt, a police that is used by the government, and we keep having a legislature that has no backbone. So my tabata is kind of long, but that was the issue that I wanted to attach that to, that independence of the justice system, that people know can stand up to a dictator and say, Mr. President, you don't have the right to do this. Mr. President, Madam President, we cannot do this. But we don't have that because our justice system is still
independent. I think Dr. Duke's tabata reminded me of a tabata that I want to share. I talked about doing the show. The police, the whole presentation of evidence on TV to me was complete tabata, right? They made a bunch of assumptions like, well, because there's iron door here, there's iron door here, here's the living quarter, there's no way an intruder could have entered. And that's not true because they are the police. They know very well in Liberia, particularly Monrovia, armed robberies are very commonplace. You can have the strongest iron door. People have figured out how to compromise and breach that. And as law enforcement, I think that they were running into conclusion. That's not to suggest that they don't have a strong case or they might not have a strong case. I just don't know that. Maybe they have additional evidence that haven't been unveiled yet. We're still gathering everything. But that one diagram that is showed the explanation of that exhibit, the way they demonstrated to me, it wasn't convincing at all.
My tabata is both the finance minister and the information minister in this hardcore politics now. I'm like, okay, at least CDC or the government, they have thousands and thousands of people to do this kind of thing. So if you are in government, if you are serving all of us, and you completely take off everything to do engaging in hardcore politics, I think that's complete tabata. You still have people that can do it. And I even heard one of the sedition complaining that if they have this kind of information, let them give it to us. Let us be the one to carry out instead of them. Especially you are, I say information, you are from maritime and finance. I mean, those, there should be some level of sanctity attached to these kind of offices, to this kind of role. Finance minister, hardcore politics or campaign politics like that in the forefront. I think that's complete tabata. And my second tabata is, I think it was in 2 years ago when the SGBV roadmap was launched. That roadmap should have been completed in, I think, September of 2022. Okay, I don't think they even achieved 10% of it, and just nobody heard about it again. And still, President Weah continued to carry the title feminist in chief. I think that's complete tabata. Dr. Duke, and let me see if somebody has tabata here too. Hassan said, my tabata tonight is Morris is talking nonsense tonight about opposition crime. No, that was not Morris. Darling say opposition crime, and you think that's tabata. Sam Waller says, how can we move forward, right? How can Labrador move forward with people who hold onto political and social theories that don't align with democracy? That is very curious. Emmanuel Bro agree with Admin 100% that the people are the referees of the game of politics. Well, and he also believed that politics is dirty. All right. I think that's all the time we have tonight. Let me get your closing. Dr. Duke, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, my closing about politics, I think there is space for decency. We have freedom of speech. People can say anything, call each other names. But let's try to educate young people about what matters really in a nation. I think politicians would do a great favor to the whole country if they were to move the debate from personality to talk about issues, to tell young people what is possible, what is not possible, and why actually they're poor, why they could be better off, and all of that. And kind of you don't have to like people, you can respect them. You don't have to like your opponent, but you can respect your opponent for just being your opponent. You don't have to insult people to tell them that their policies is bad. You can tell them your politics is bad because of 1, 2, 3. You don't stand up and say, oh, you may die tomorrow. Oh, no, you never worked in any government before. Or those are little things that, they don't address the main issue. What is your program? What is your project? What is your social contract? What are you proposing to the Liberian people? And all of that. And how do you make sure that people who listen to you are empowered somehow, that they get some kind of mental power to free themselves from some kind of subjugation, poverty, whatever it is. Either you win or not, but your candidacy means something to people, that you bring issues to the fore that will make people free and stronger and say, yes, we learned something from this candidate, not because you call somebody ma or pa or somebody. So let's do that, and let's keep the judiciary independent, professional, and strong. Good night.
Thank you. Mr. Salif.
Yeah, I would tread along similar lines as Dr. Dukes. Politics build nations. Politics build nations because it's about leadership. It's about distribution of power and allocation of resources. Politics can be good, and it has been good for a lot of other countries. And in Liberia, however, what we're seeing, until we change our mentality and our perception about politics, it's dragging our country down. For instance, people believe that the most prestigious jobs are to be successful. You just have to win election by hook or crook, and you get there and you steal. You amass resources that aren't yours. You take the public funds, plunder the state, you build big mansions for yourself, and then the next generation comes and does the same thing. The next one comes and does the same thing, whereas the common good is neglected. I think politics that focuses on the common good of the society, of the people, is the kind of politics we should begin to be directing ourselves towards. And to begin to do that, we have to think about politics not as personalities, but politics as institutions as ideologies and ideas and vision that in the end, where I live in the U.S. in Minnesota, there used to be a senator who died in a plane crash, and the late Paul Weston used to say, "We do good when we all do well. We do well when we all do well," which means you, the individual Liberian citizen, you do well when your country is in good shape. When the hospitals are functioning, the schools are functioning well, roads are good, all parts of the country are connected, things like that. You can get good health outcomes anywhere you go. Our people are trained, the opportunities for young people, for everybody. That is the kind of politics that I look forward to. And I hope that, we can begin to view politics in that light.
Thank you so much. And indeed, that's the kind of politics that we want for Liberia, where the rules are observed and we discuss the issues and exchange ideas, talk to people and see people doing things your way based on that power of persuasion and not through hook or crook. Say, when we get there, it's about winning. So we want to do everything to win. And when we get there, imagine, okay, and I'm one of those who don't support this idea of going to counties. Oh, this is vote rich. So you're going to take candidate from somewhere to be your running mate no matter what, because that person is vote rich. Well, that means if you come from Bapolo that's not vote rich, I can't get that opportunity. So let's have a level playing field, and that's politics. And on the issue of Councillor Gloria Musu-Scott and family members, we just hope that justice is blind and that justice prevails. I want to thank you, gentlemen, so much for your time. Also want to thank our viewers for watching, commenting, and calling. Always focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. On that note, we end with our song that says, "We are all Liberians." Have a good night, and God bless you.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.